Rosa. This is my last webinar for the year, and I'm so happy to close strong with such a special guest who just recently fundraised $2 million for his platform, and he will tell us more about that. Thank you. Okay, Tom, you can go ahead.
Great, Vanya, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of you being a part of the webinar today. It's an honor to be with you. I hope that we can spend the next 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, talking about some of the lessons that we've learned as an organization over the last couple of years, and some of the conversations that we've had across the country and internationally in the space of enterprise coaching and the culture that organizations are trying to build. So that's really where we're going to take this conversation, but feel free to send a chat to Vanya at any time and interrupt me as we're going, because this is really about you and your time. So let's dive right in. So here's our agenda for today. I want to tell you just a little bit about LegUp, and that's not really much more than describing what we've been doing the last couple of years and why this might be valuable for you. We're going to talk about the challenges. We're going to talk about the cultures. We're going to talk about cultural meaning within large organizations. And these are not my words. These are the words that we've listened to for the last couple of years, as I've mentioned. The last part of our discussion will really be around how to develop successful programs as a coach. What are large companies looking for? What are the cohorts of learning that organizations are looking for today? And then how do you position yourself as a forward-thinking enterprise coach? I think that's really important as we move into the next phase of the coaching evolution in this country. So the goal of the webinar, from my perspective, is to help you better understand the customer's needs, define how you add value as a coach, and explore various ways to scale coaching delivery. These are the things that we've been thinking about, and I want to share them with you today. Now, as was mentioned, I'm leading LegUp, one of the co-founders of the organization. We did just raise $2 million in capital from private investors. That's primarily driven to help us expand our team and expand some of our technology capabilities and help us grow in 2020. But when we start, that's looking forward. If we start to look back a little bit, let me just tell you a little bit about LegUp if you don't know anything about us. We started in 2017. We started with 2 co-founders. We now have a small team, just under 10. And we are working with HR departments, over 100 lives, to bring voluntary benefits and employer-sponsored benefits to their employee population. Certainly, we have coaches that are seeking work and looking for more hours on our platform, but none of our coaches work exclusively for LegUp. They all have their own practices, and they all take a part of their time on the LegUp platform. And then certainly employees are always looking for coaching through their employer, whether that's through discounted services, lower price point, or their employer paying for it, their manager or their HR leader paying for it. In 2018, we enrolled 250 eligible enterprise clients. That took on a bit of a life of its own because it included 5.4 million employees. Our first customer was Boeing that we enrolled in just about a year ago now. Then Dell, IBM, Intel. These are also our highest utilizers on the platform. We have a lot of engineers in our space that are looking for coaching. If you don't know what industry we're in, pretty straightforward, we're in coaching. But really for us, it's about employee development. It's about supporting HR from a different angle. And now we've got 1,000 monthly users. We have users in 40 countries. We have coaches in 25 countries and over 300 coaches on the platform today. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a who we are flag to help you understand where we're getting this information I'm going to share with you today. And thank you for bearing with me. For those of you that haven't noticed, I'm drinking ginger tea and I've got a bit of a cold. So thank you for bearing with me with the voice today. So let's start with company challenges. Where are the areas of opportunity for organizations. And this is really where we start when we talk to organizations across the country. 80% of employees are unhappy at work. So that means Sunday afternoon is tough for a lot of people when they're looking forward to Monday morning, or quite frankly, not looking forward to Monday morning. And so we have to understand what the deeper impact is there. And that really has an impact on society in general. You have more stress at work, and workplace stress is really defined by the disconnect between what your skills are and what you're being asked to do. That's what creates workplace stress. So if I'm asked to do something that is not within my skill set, it's going to cause stress. Now that has a whole wealth of impacts on higher healthcare costs. And when we talk to large organizations, they're always trying to manage their employee population from a well-being standpoint. So they offer medical, dental, vision, etc., certainly in this country. And then how are they managing those healthcare costs? What programs and processes are they putting in place to not only manage the cost, but manage those employees so they live better lives? We try to understand what that root cause is. It's different by employer, it's different by population, and that ultimately always falls back to some sort of stress-related behavior. And so if we can intervene, if we can close the gap between what an employee's skill set is and what they are asked to do through coaching, then we can make an impact not only on the stress of that population, but on the healthcare costs as well. Something you probably haven't heard before. The last thing that's really important, and I don't think this is news to anybody on this call, is there's some broken leadership models out there. Gone are your grandfather's leadership tactics that just don't work in modern day. And so we have to find more conducive ways to get through to a population and ultimately allow them to thrive in their job, no matter if they're a Generation Z, a millennial, Generation X, or a boomer. So we spent some time asking this question that's on the left from our clients. How do you feel when you're part of an enterprise with a great culture? And culture really drives the bottom line, in my opinion. I've never been a part of a team that didn't have a great culture that ultimately led to success. I've been a part of teams that had poor cultures that did not lead to success. And so this is really where organizations are looking. And to understand at a deeper level what that means to the employee, these are the words that we heard from employees when we asked this question. What does it mean to you? And it's really being authentic, feeling free, not a lot of weight on your shoulders, being able to be creative and open, being excited to come to work. So instead of the Sunday afternoon blues, you're feeling great on a Monday morning coming to work and feeling motivated. And this is really important to understand that the end user is looking for these feelings when they're trying to go to work and accomplish the things that they're trying to accomplish. Certainly a baseline, and then we back up from there to understand how we actually execute on it. So let's talk about enterprise culture a little deeper. We understand the feelings of what it looks like from an individual employee perspective, but I always ask, what's the secret ingredient? And when I talk to HR leaders and I talk to CHROs across the country, or even middle managers that are looking to put programs in for their 10-person team, excuse me, it's really not the mission or vision of the company that everybody gets excited about. And it's certainly something you look at when you get hired, and it's certainly something that Generation Z and millennials are looking for. They want to work for a mission-driven company. But really, that all comes down to daily behaviors. And those daily behaviors are attitudes and values and the way that we treat each other in the office. And that can certainly be augmented with really good coaching so that you can identify how to bring the culture from where you are to where you want to be as an organization. Now, there's certainly some unwritten rules, and I hear this from HR leaders all the time. How are you going to help us work together and be more collaborative? We make decisions in a different way that maybe your coaches don't understand. We handle conflicts differently. And how are you going to help us all learn together? Now, as an organization, what we do is we write executive briefs that go to all of our coaches. We co-write those with our employer groups, and we're able to really understand what those leaders are looking for from the coaching that they get from our LegUp team. And I think that's important to really understand how to scale across large organizations, because one of the things that HR folks are looking for, they're looking for scalability, but they're also looking for everything to be in line. They don't want outliers. They want programs and products that align with each other and that are systematic. And they don't want a lot of variation. So they really want to be able to go into meetings in their organizations and say, we can scale this coaching model. This coaching model has a terrific outcome that we can measure. And certainly there won't be a lot of variety, whether you're in New York or Seattle or Texas or right here in Orange County. There won't be a lot of variety in the coaching you get. It'll all be pretty systematic. And so these are the things that we talk about when we're talking about culture at the enterprise level. Let me pause. Any questions that are coming up that I need to answer?
Not so far. No questions. We have a good group of people on the call. I hope they're enjoying. And yes, please, any comments or anything that stands out so far, anything that we can focus after the presentation, please type it in. I would love to hear from you. I would love to make it more interactive as always. I wish we can just turn on cameras and microphones and everybody can participate. Maybe later.
Well, let me jump right into how we develop successful programs. There's 3 more slides.
Perfect.
So
yes.
this is not a long presentation, but these are the 3 things that we highlighted. Vanya and I highlighted as your takeaways. These are the last 3 things. And I want to spend some time here because I think we've learned a lot about the coaching industry in the last couple of years and how to position coaches within the enterprise segment. And really the first thing we think about is starting with the end in mind. So what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve? And then what are the measurable ways we're going to look at it to get there? We've played around with a lot of different theories and methodologies. And I know certainly ICF coaches have a lot of different tools in their toolbox from a methodology standpoint. We've landed on integral theory just because it combines a lot of different components within the coaching space. And we really were looking at how do we hold people accountable? How do we ensure self-reflection? How do we create a system coaching model that has an element of system in it? And how do we ensure meaningful conversation so that people grow? And this has been a real eye-opener for us landing on this methodology. When we started, a lot of our coaches had their own methodologies and they brought that to the table, which was terrific. And we've just grown from there with the feedback from our clientele and moved into this integral theory model, which is really exciting. We certainly want to make sure from a successful program standpoint that you've got a commitment and effort that are well established up front. So if you're going into a large enterprise, you really want to make sure that you've got that commitment from the manager, the HR leader, all the way up to the C-suite, and then all the way down to the employee or the end user, so that you can ensure a successful coaching model. This one is big for us. Let the learner customize the program. Many coaches have told us for years that the first thing you do is you get the learner, you get the employee, and you understand what their needs are. You do a needs or intake analysis, a chemistry call, whatever you might call it. And then we customize. The problem that we found is the buyer doesn't feel like that's a good model. So it doesn't feel good to say, well, what's my price? How is this going to work? Oh, just get on the phone with me and we'll talk through it. Well, you've really got to let them customize the program from a menu of items. And what we found was we were more successful when we had a menu of items and allowing people to customize their own program than giving them a blank sheet of paper and saying, we'll come up with it together. So that was an interesting lesson learned. And then you've got to let the learner pick the coach. So this is big for us. We're just sort of organizing all of the coaching models into one delivery system, and letting the learner pick the coach has been important. You all know that that relationship is the #1 component to a beneficial outcome. And so That's very important to us as well. And then we created a 6-step, 12-week program model. There's lots of different variations of this, but the minimum that we look for is somebody to go through a 12-week coaching program to see measurable behavioral outcomes. So these are the things we look at when we're looking at how to program coaching. So what are the cohorts of learning that enterprises are looking for? They're looking for a couple of things. They're looking for an organization that has an established community of coaches. They're also looking for a community within their learning group. So let's say that community could be new salespeople, or it could be account managers in Chicago, or project managers across the country. But however that is defined, when you're going into an organization, establishing this idea that you're gonna run a string through the organization. Let's use that, project managers across the country. We're gonna help project managers across country. That community is very important to them because they are all like-minded individuals and they want to give them the same type of coaching and behavioral training. Second thing is experience. They're looking for an experience. This is not about coming in, getting on the phone, talking through a few things, and engaging with the employee. They really want an end-to-end experience. They want that employee to feel valued as a result of this experience, and they want that community feel to then have a very individualized feel. Now, the coaches that I've known for a long time do this really, really well. I mean, this is the gift that you all have, is being able to take what could be or seen as generalized data and creating this really wonderful experience for the employee. So something that they're absolutely looking for. And then this shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. They're looking for measured assessments on improvement. We've gone back and forth on this assessment discussion over and over again. Do we build our own with the help of some PhDs? Do we outsource assessments? There's so many of them. The challenge here is that they get very expensive. And so when you're trying to keep your costs down to be able to scale across an enterprise, the assessment model starts to get a little clunky. The other thing that happens is you go into organizations and different HR people have different experiences with different assessments. So they may love a particular assessment and dislike another one that you're working on. So you have to be a little flexible here when you're going into organizations, because what we've learned is that they're all different and they all want different things from the assessments. So what we've done is try to build our own assessment models that allow us some flexibility to plug and play whatever that employer is looking for. But certainly community, experience, and measured outcomes are critical in the cohorts of learning in large enterprises. Okay, how do you position yourself as an enterprise coach? Couple of things here: formalized programs and learner experience. So what we found that does not work is showing up with a blank piece of paper and saying, I'm a terrific coach, let's figure it out on the fly. We found that coming up with a methodology, coming up with formalized programs and allowing the learner to experience that is very important. Second thing, focus on certain cohorts and know your specialization. So it's really important to not be a generalist in today's market. I recognize that many coaches can coach in any industry at any level. I get it. And I've heard it over and over again. The reality is your buyer doesn't want to hear that. Your buyer wants to hear, I know marketing, I know industrial engineering, I know sales and marketing. And these are the three things that I'm an expert in, and I'm narrow and I'm deep as a coach. And that's really what they want to hear. And so if you spread yourself too thin, you say, I can coach anybody at any level at any company, what that gets translated to on the other side is this is a generalist and not an expert. And most of the coaches, you really are experts, but we just want to market you that way so that the end user understands that. And then the other piece is this industry component. I've heard this time and time again, any industry at any time, but the reality is there are nuances to industries, whether it's real estate or insurance or manufacturing or high tech, that you just don't know unless you've been in the game. And so we take a measured approach to making sure that our our team understands which industry they're targeted to. And we've taken some time to self-reflect on where people can really excel. The other piece here that we always talk about internally is you really want your coaching job to fill your cup. That's really why you started being a coach. So take on the industries that really excite you, and leave the ones that maybe don't excite you to the side for somebody else, because that'll create a better coaching experience for everybody. And then, of course, the last thing that we just talked about is this creating a memorable journey. You really want to create an end-to-end solution for your enterprise clients. They're not looking for piecemeal products. They're not looking for piecemeal technology. They really want to go to you as a partner because you fill a hole that they can't fill. And they've got lots of technology partners. They've got lots of consulting practices that come and approach them. And so you want to make sure that this journey for them is really memorable and organic, and it feels good. And then ultimately that we're measuring those outcomes for their employees. So those are the few things that we're thinking about as we position our coaches in the enterprise space. Hopefully this was helpful. I'll hand it back to Vanya for questions.
There is one question so far from Rafi, and he's asking, how often do you see coaching programs from top executives to employees in enterprises? Any examples?
How often do you see coaching programs from executives to employees?
Yes, in the enterprises. I am quite confused about the question. Maybe Rafi, if you can elaborate a little bit more.
I think Rafi might mean internal coaching from the executive level down to the employee level. Is that correct?
If the executives, I don't know, Rafi, can you please add up to your yes, that's what he means.
So executives of yesteryear certainly spent more time in mentoring roles. So my definition of mentoring is unpaid and coaching is paid. And so in mentoring roles, you see a lot of executives that used to take the up-and-comers or the high-performing individuals under their wing, so to speak, and bring them along. I think those days are mostly behind us. Large organizations struggle with this. They want their executives to take on the next level of talent, but the time commitment to do so and the global nature of most of the businesses really does not create a conducive environment for that type of mentoring. The other piece that doesn't get talked about a lot is that when you talk to an executive, they want to be really careful not to show favoritism within their organization to certain employees. And from the employee standpoint, they are not going to be completely honest with that executive about what's going on and how they're feeling, because they're trying to position themselves for promotion, most likely. And so having an outside voice from an organizational standpoint is really helpful, not only for the executive that maybe doesn't have the time, but also for the employee that they can then sort of pull back their shield and their armor and be honest and open with somebody that's not internal.
I also can add to that there might be many ethical conflict of interest on an ethical level when if executives provides coaching to their employees in a formal way. Yes, you can go and you can have a slight likely coaching conversation, but I don't think an engagement of coaching would be really valuable, or a program that is led by executives to their employees. There is many actually cases with conflict of interest for internal coaches that they experience, and they're not really 100% effective. So I agree with you that outside coaching expert is much more beneficial. And of course, if everybody has the little bit of the coaching tool skills, is more than helpful as well. So we have a couple of more questions. Vicky is asking, what are some of the strategies you found successful in this fourth point, creating memorable customer journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a couple of things that we try to do. We create workbooks and models that we give to the employer and the employee. So people are always looking for some sort of reading material, but they're not looking for the 400-page business book. So we found that creating briefs and creating documents that go alongside the coaching is really valuable. That creates a really nice experience. The other component is not asking the employee to guess around what they want to work on. So we very simply give a list of just about 50 topics to an employee and say, what would you like to work on? What are the different components of your job? So whether it's career triggers or emotional labor or being authentic or finding balance, maybe it's finding purpose in your career, developing a career vision, using a sales matrix, understanding politics. All of these different components can be laid out really nicely. And then the employee can see it and recognize it and say, wow, you know what, I didn't know that I needed that until I had this conversation or until I looked at this list. And then they can put those things together into a coaching program. We find that just not giving people a blank page is a better option and creates more traction, first of all, and then secondly, more of a relationship right out of the gate.
Okay, thank you. We have a few more questions from Amy, and I think they're around how your platform works. First is, how does the learner pick the coach?
Okay.
Second is, how long is the coaching session?
Yeah. Okay, so a learner goes through an onboarding process with us. They go through a stage where they can either create their own program or they can pick a program off the shelf that's been developed by one of our premier coaches. And so they can take one of those different avenues. Once they do that, they can, if they pick a program off the shelf, they'll have 2 coaches that they can choose from. Those coaches are the drivers of these programs. They own the programs, they're dedicated to them, they know them very well. So they pick one of those 2 coaches. Second option, if you choose to go and create your own program, is that you'll get 3 coaches that have been handpicked for you. So that coach will be aligned based on industry, career level, and then the target on what you're trying to achieve. So the different topics. And ultimately, that creates our AI model that allows us to customize outcomes for employees. So that's how they pick the coach. It's either self-select, if they take something off the shelf, or if they create their own program, we use our artificial intelligence model to give them a coach. The second question is, how long are the coaching sessions? Coaching sessions are 50 minutes each time. We tend to see that the rhythm of that is every 2 weeks for an employee. That seems to be the rhythm that works best, for employees and for employers. And certainly coaches adjust well with a 2-week rhythm as well.
And can I add to this question? So how long, how many hours usually is one coaching program?
Yeah, so it's usually 6 face-to-face sessions and then some self-study on the employee side. So the 6 face-to-face sessions allows the coach to go through that particular topic of the week, to work through potentially the workbook that we've created for both sides, and work through some of the details with that employee. Now, as coaches, you all know that it doesn't always stay on track, right? You may come to the call thinking you're talking about balance and work-life balance, and something else came up at work that needs that coach's attention. And we allow for that flexibility within our model, because it's really about creating the right outcome for the employee along the way.
Okay, and how you track the progress if you if you allow to anything that is urgent to be brought to the coaching conversation?
So we want to allow a certain level of flexibility. Rigid organizations, in my opinion, just don't last because that's not what the end user is looking for. So we track all of our meetings. We track those that don't show. We track those that are completed. But the conversation that happens between the coach and the coachee is very private. And so we don't pretend to know what that conversation is. And we don't want to know. That would violate the ethical standards that we all live by in terms of coaching. So there is a little bit of an ebb and flow. Now, what I hear from learners and from coaches is, I'll use the topic of work-life balance. It's a good one. We all understand it. Let's say we're coaching somebody on work-life balance. You may only spend 15 minutes on work-life balance because you spent 45 minutes on some other topics, but we always get to that topic during the call. Or you may spend an hour on work-life balance and it leads you down a different path for that employee. And so those topics are set up to not be all consuming, that allows for that flexibility. But again, based on regulations and certainly, our privacy rules of engagement, we don't know.
Okay, and Amy is asking more questions about how do you use as an assessment model to see how effective is the coaching has been, how you assess the effectiveness of the coaching?
Yeah, so there's lots of different models. We've used the 5-factor model for quite some time to assess our coaching practice and how it's going. We like it. Our customers like it. Do we think we can do more here? The answer is yes. What I am really charged with is I really want to figure out, how do we tie coaching to stress? How do we tie coaching to stress to healthcare, right? How do we tie coaching to stress to healthcare, to employee engagement, to retention, right? All of these different components, because we're people. We go to work and we don't come in pieces. We come as a whole person. And what I found is the assessment models of today don't tie it all together for employers. They don't. And they've done a great job of getting us to this point. But what I would love to see, and what we're working on, is an assessment that takes the individual through a pre-coaching analysis, understanding their stress levels, understanding what their healthcare costs are, understanding what their wellness and well-being state is, and then all of us working together to move that needle for the employee in the right direction. That's going to take some time. I'm an optimist. I'm not crazy, but it's something that I'm very, very passionate about.
Yeah, you touched the nerve here, because I think that the only way for this to be possible is through technology, and actually through finding a way to utilize AI into your platform. We have one more question from Amy, and then I will move to some of the questions that I have that they're tied specifically to technology. How do you ensure coaches understand the integral theory that you mentioned?
Well, first of all of our coaches are ICF certified coaches. We certainly believe in the rules of engagement that the ICF sets forth in terms of behavioral expectations. And so that has not been a problem for us thus far. We also train our coaches in this area of understanding, so that they know that their conversations are completely private, and nobody at LegUp nor at the enterprise should know what the conversation is or took place, with the exception of somebody wanting to cause harm to themselves or their employer, right? Those are the things that from a human standpoint, we would try to intervene to the best of our ability.
So you follow kind of the standards of ICF, or what kind of ethical code do you guys follow?
Yeah, it's very simple. We mimic in parallel the ICF code of ethics. It's very simple for us to understand. It's very simple for our coaches to understand. So there's very little variation in our coach agreement than is in the ICF model, just because it's tried and it's true and it works.
Okay, you guys can still type your questions. We'll get a second round of questions if you have more of that. I just want to ask you, what were the pain points that you saw when you decided to create such a platform? I know that you started a few years ago. I remember you ever since then, and that was a long journey and successful so far. So tell me a little bit more of that.
Yeah, look, we set out to create a coaching platform built and designed by coaches. And so the hardest thing when we started was to get a coach to call us back, to get somebody to actually engage. I can't tell you how many coaches either hung up on me or didn't return my phone call as we were trying to get an understanding of what coaches were really looking for. The reason that we wanted to start with coaches is we wanted to build a platform that really spoke to coaches around the coaching process. And we were trying to understand that. We then pivoted, right? So this is sort of a learning opportunity. We pivoted to really trying to understand the enterprise. And so we were trying to match what coaches were telling us with the enterprise message, and it wasn't working at all. And so we had to start going back to the coaches and saying, well, this isn't really working. Do you have any other suggestions? And then we'd go back to the enterprise and ask, well, how would this work in an ideal environment for you? And so matching those two was really challenging, to try and find how to match and balance the needs and desires of a coach and a coaching practice with the needs and desires of a scalable enterprise model. It's not easy to do. And then the third component, which is certainly not last, is that employee experience, which I've talked about at length today, and making sure that it's seamless, it's thoughtful, they have the tools at their disposal, they feel like they're getting the right coach, they feel like they're getting the right program given to them, or they can design it themselves. All of those pieces seem really simple. They seem really easy. And if I could go back 2 years and you could play this video for me, it would have been a lot faster to get here. But it doesn't work that way. You've got to learn and grow and pivot and spin and be able to listen to the market. And for us, listening to the market is 3 different markets. We've got enterprises, we've got coaches, and we've got employees, completely different needs and wants. So matching those was the biggest challenge for us as a company.
Yeah, I hear you. And especially because I've been in the same boat about creating a coaching software. It was a software application and that I saw, then it's not anymore for coaches, it's for management. But however, I faced a lot of resistance from coaches. And when I started 2 years ago, my coaching tech and coaching webinar, I had like hardly 2, 3, 4 people on the call. Now I have a little bit more and I'm very happy. But what do you think coaches need to probably shift or understand better in order to get a little bit more involved into the development of these coaching platforms and the opportunity to partner with technology versus resisting and having the safe thought around, well, AI cannot take over. We are humans and we are better in decision making, we are better in connecting, we are better, etc., etc. So there are many things that technology is better at. So what do you think from the perspective of getting out of the resistance and being more open, they should understand?
Yeah, I think you should recognize that the market is shifting. There's a lot of coaching platforms. We tend to identify that there's currently 43 competitors in our space. So I don't pretend that this is easy for a coach to understand. What I will say is that if you look at a different model, let's go back when insurance companies started with healthcare and health insurance in the United States. What happened was you had a lot of individual practitioners, doctors, your local doctor, and they ran their own practice and they worked with families, and that was terrific if you could afford it. And then the cost of healthcare started to creep up and enter insurance companies after World War II. And what they did is they built networks of doctors and hospitals that, whether they were geographic or across the country, served the purpose of bringing a pool of money together at a lower cost and then paying for medical expenses. You might be asking why I'm rambling on about this. Well, the reason is I see the same thing for the coaching industry. There are 50,000 coaches in the world, 20,000 ICF coaches, and none of it's organized. And so if you're an individual coach and you're sitting there saying, well, I'm going to get X client and Y client, that's fine. Absolutely go after it and get it done. The challenge will be that you won't have the technology or the sales team to be able to compete with platform models that are going into this networking arrangement. So very similar to, insurance companies 50, 60, 70 years ago, I see that happening in coaching. So I think you have to identify, do I want to be part of one of these platforms, networks or not? If I don't, understand what the implications of that are, and understand, if you do, what the implications of that could be for your business. Second would be, what are the formalized outcomes that I want to model, and what are the programs that I'm going to pre-develop before I even start the conversation with an employer? And then I would say the other piece is, when you talk about AI, I agree, there's no touch better than the human touch when it comes to decision making. There are some companies listed in that 43 that are doing artificial intelligence coaching where a robot coaches you back. I don't get it. Personally, I think it's a play to build a company, scale it just enough and sell it, because on its own, it's not valuable. Now,
not yet.
Not yet.
I'm just going to say not yet.
Not yet. And so that model is a build, scale, and sell today. Now, what could happen is somebody absorbs that AI model into some pure coaching, and now you've got something that's a little more well-rounded. But the one-on-one interaction and the soft skill and professional development, skill development, is always going to be face-to-face, human-to-human, no matter how good the AI gets.
And especially in time of transitions and constant change, where we feel that we are more disconnected, even though we have more availability to connecting and flexibility to be anywhere in the world, just turning on our camera and our computer. However, yes, these skills are much more needed. And I had a coaching conversation with a client last week, and she said that she's hiring somebody, and what she's looking is to somebody who is curious, who can ask good questions, who can challenge her. And she said, I'm not looking exactly for the technical skills, because I can teach this person, I can teach that, but all the extra of the way of thinking, the way of connecting, I cannot really teach, or if I can, it's going to take me much more time versus the technical part. So I agree with you that what we do is highly valuable. It's not going to be fully replaced, but I would argue that we're in a time that AI is developed so much. We talk to the AI, we listen. There are robots that are already doing gymnastics, which that wasn't available like just 3 years ago. Self-driving cars, so much advancement into this technology, and it's powerful. And what I see is the opportunity of really utilizing that power in a way of getting done the basics things, as you already in the comments, assessment. This is something that technology can do much more better and much more effective in a way if it's set up the right way and the algorithm is created. So Where do you think the future of technology is going, and the future of coaching in technology in particular?
Yeah, I think the future of coaching, as I mentioned, is really going to be around large coaching networks that can scale. And so I see that being the underpinning to a number of different platform companies that will try to figure out how to enter the market or grow market share with panels of coaches. Primarily because organizations, when we talk to them, want variety in terms of their coaching panel. They want diversity of thought. And then they want systemized programs that can scale. So as an individual coach practitioner in Orange County or Chicago, it's very difficult to go into Boeing and say, I can scale across your 150,000 employees, because it's just not true. And the other comment that comes up is, well, what if somebody isn't looking for you as a coach? What if they want somebody else? And so you've got to have that bench that can really support large enterprises. So that's a big piece of it. From a technology standpoint, we're going to get better and better at this, right? We're going to get better at the AI. We're going to get better at understanding what people's needs and wants are. We're going to get better at deriving outcomes. I see growth in the PhD side, where we're going to have more PhDs working in this segment to figure out how we can improve the lives of employees, how we can improve their mental health, how we can improve their physical health, their stress at work, and how we can help them grow in their career. So I see growth in the academic world here as well. And for pure technology, it all comes down to data. So when you talk about AI, if any of you have built any of this before, you'll know that it really is a set of data that you're measuring and evaluating to then lead you to specific outcomes that you test and retest and then put the data back in again. So for those that have lots of data and lots of clients and lots of employees doing lots of things through technology, you're going to be able to get better and better and better at it. So for example, where we compete today will be very different than where we compete 3 years from now, because we'll get better over time as we have more information.
Okay, we have two questions. First is from Rafi, actually both are from Rafi, and he said, what makes your platform unique from the other 43 available on the market?
Yeah, that's a good one. So LegUp is designed to be an employee benefits first platform. We're the only employee benefits first organization in coaching. So we want to be part of the fabric of an employer and their employees for a very long time as a benefit. So the other 42 are looking at this from a cost perspective. They're a cost. They go into an organization, they give them a bill, and they're a big cost for that organization. The difference for us is, again, the benefits model, the employee downward approach through benefits. So let me give it to you this way. If you're an employee, you're going to sign up for your medical, your dental, your vision, and you're also going to sign up for your coaching sessions from LegUp. Now, whether the employer gives you some subsidy towards that or not is up to the employer, but you're going to have that option to be able to sign up for coaching on an annual basis.
Thank you. And the other question he has is, do you allow clients on your platform that are not connected to any enterprise?
We do. So this is what we call the individual market. So the individual market are employees that can come to the platform and find a LegUp coach. We absolutely allow for that. Part of the reason that we do that is it's tied to our enterprise strategy, that people that leave an organization need a place to go, right? People that are in transition need a place to go. So our goal is to empower growth for employees around the world. And to do that, we need to service the enterprise market very well, but you don't want to carve out the individual market. So we offer options for individuals and for enterprise as well.
Great. And if coaches on this call want to become part of LegUp, so what's the process? And is it available? Opportunities available? Are you still enrolling?
So I would encourage you to look at legup.com, www.leggup.com, and take a look around. Right now, our coaching panel is closed. Our desire is to take the first 300 coaches that joined us and make sure that the utilization is increased, and that we make sure that their bucket or cup is full before we open up the panel again. I do expect that we will open it up in 2020. Our growth targets are pretty aggressive, and so it shouldn't be but a few months before we open up the process for additional coaches.
Okay, great. And just information now, how the payments for coaches are proportion, like how you calculate it, what coaches get paid. Is it different?
So we have 2 different models on the platform. We have the opportunity for a revenue share in one of our models, which is our marketplace model. And you can see that on the website. And then the other model is our fixed price model. That is an invite-only group of coaches that do most of our enterprise coaching for us. And that is a fixed price between us and the coach.
Okay. And Greta is asking, what are your criteria in terms of qualifications for LegUp coaches in addition to ICF credentials?
Yeah, so all the coaches, as you mentioned in your question, are ICF coaches. So beyond that, what we're looking for are master's degrees and PhDs. We're also looking for people with 10 years or more in a particular subject or industry. So most of the coaches, this is pretty standard. You've done one thing for more than 10 years. And what we want to do is tap into that expertise in that particular area. If you worked for large engineering firms, we want to make sure that when we have an engineering firm, you're the first coach they see. But if it's a marketing firm, you're not going to be the first coach they see. So we look for experience that is very diverse in our coaching population. We don't want everybody to be the same. We want all of those unique experiences to come out in our coaching. So it's ICF, it's 10 years in a particular industry. Advanced degrees are great. Doesn't have to be an advanced degree. And then certainly we interview all of our coaches and take them through an onboarding process. So there are times that culturally it's not a good fit. There are times that we get into a discussion and we can just tell this isn't the right fit for them or for us. So we go through that interview process as well.
Okay. And would you be willing to give a range of price that coaches get paid with both of models that you're using?
Well, I can tell you that the ICF has put out some statistics that show that coaching is about $260 an hour. I tend to find that that's a little high on the high end. We don't have anybody that does coaching for less than $100 really on our marketplace platform. So the range is probably somewhere in between there. The one comment I would make on pricing is that the pricing models, in my opinion, are broken today. And what I mean by that is you can't have one price for an enterprise buyer and one price for your person down the street that you met at an alumni event or at a networking event that you're going to coach on the side. It just doesn't work for people. It feels, just doesn't feel good that you would be getting the same coaching at different prices because somebody's an executive and somebody's in their mid-career. So I would encourage any coach to come up with a price that fits your budget, come up with a model that that fits for enterprises and for individuals, and stop playing the game of I'm going to overcharge enterprises and charge $2,500 or $5,000 a month, and I'm going to undercharge somebody $75 a session who I met at a networking event. That has to be broken. You've got to normalize the pricing model.
Okay, we are close to the end. I just want to ask you for final words about what coaches should do to prepare for the future differently than what is observed so far?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are right off the top of my head and things we talked about today. You have to productize coaching. We spent 2.5 years been beating my head against the wall, trying to figure out how to keep coaching organic and the blank sheet of paper model where you can sit down and go through a session and figure everything out together. It just doesn't work. You have to productize. So if you're not doing that, I think you're behind in what's happening in the market. You're going to want to identify your specific target market. So don't be the coach that coaches everybody. It's okay to turn down coaching opportunities. It's okay to walk away because your best self is going to come through when you're coaching in industries you understand and know, and you're coaching at career levels that you're comfortable with and you have expertise in. So narrow down your focus as a coach. The narrower, the better. The more narrow and deep you get, the better off you're going to be, and the more marketable you are for yourself, for a platform. It really gets better when you start doing that. So those are the two things I would think of. The last thing would be try to accept us aggregators in the new world of coaching or the disruptors, because I don't think we're going away. We're going to be around for the next 4 steps in the foreseeable future. So try to understand what we're trying to accomplish and decide if that's for you or not for you.
Final question from Greta. She's asking, what do you mean by productize?
So what I mean by that is when you productize coaching, you're really developing off-the-shelf products, whether they're 6-session, 9-session, 12-session programs that can be repeated over time. So you're allowing an employee to come to you and say, here are the leadership skills I want to develop. And you take that right off the shelf and say, this is my leadership program that I've developed. It's a product, and it'll take you 6 sessions in 12 weeks. And the fixed price is whatever that fixed price is. That is how you productize coaching. It's something we spent a lot of time on, and not something that I've seen taught by the ICF so far to the coaches around the country and certainly around the world.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you today. Thank you everybody who joined us today. And I would love to wish you Happy New Year, wonderful holidays. Don't forget, if you're in the Orange County area, join the final party for the season on December 11, our chapter party. And I will be coming back with new guests for the new year after that. So track the website, see what's going on. Tom, if there is anything that I can do to support your mission, I am always available. And I love to see that people like you that we met a few years ago are gaining success and improving the accessibility to coaching for the world overall. And that's powerful. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. It's nice being with you today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.